I've been aware of Jenny Hval's music for quite some time now. I have listened to a few of her albums, although I will say I probably should have freshened my ears up with all of her discography before getting into this new album. But I did go back to Apocalypse Girl, so I can at least say I've gone back to one of them. And I thought it was pretty interesting. It's a very bizarre lyrical album that I don't even know what much of it means. Some of her lyrics are so strange and abstract and weird and almost tongue-in-cheek and quirky, to the point where I think there's just such a strangeness to it that I kind of like. But Classic Object seems to have set itself up in a unique way in that the album doesn't really seem to sound anything like what I remember her music sounding like before, to be honest. I feel like musically the instrumentals are brighter, there's a bit more emphasis on some really lush instrumentation and just some really gorgeous sounding music, to be honest, which I've never really associated particularly with Jenny Hval at all. Maybe I'm wrong to think that, and maybe listening back to everything that she's put out might give me a new perspective, because that can happen quite a lot when you love a new album by an artist where you didn't love everything before it. You just suddenly go back and you go, yeah, I was wrong about it all. And vocally it feels like she's found her voice this time around as well. I feel like in a lot of ways she's found her voice. Not that it was never there before, but I just feel like she's really pleasing on the ears on this album throughout. And I'm just impressed by so many of the melodies that she conjures up. And it reminds me a little bit of the Kelly Lee Owens album from 2020, whereby it just felt like the vocal just really came through and blossomed. Not that they were doing similar things at all, they're very different artists, but it's just that feeling of an artist finding their voice and everything kind of coming together that this album brings here. I'm struck immediately by Year of Love with a really intriguing and strange melody that, with the drum pattern that comes in at around the 2-minute mark, sounds like something you'd expect from like Cuban music, you know, Afro-Cuban jazz, something like that kind of like earthly sounding drum. The lyrics are quite odd as well, where she's talking about signing a deal with the patriarchy and then talks through that one scenario where she was at a show and a man proposes to a woman in the middle of the show. This sounds like that premise for the film Marry Me with J-Lo. It's not the exact same premise, but it just feels as weird as that. This becomes a trend for me on the album. I will say the lyrics often can be quite confusing, not entirely sure what she's trying to go with, and her abstract approach, which has always been part of her music, can just leave you a bit confused and not entirely confident in your assessment of what she's singing about or what the meaning behind the words that she puts to paper really are about or anything like that. There's always just a bit of a much to think about, I will say. But yeah, American Coffee is very much like this as well. She just comes across as really blasé on this track. So I feel like there's some critique of society in there somewhere, but I'm not entirely sure if it lands or anything like that. But I don't know, man, even with the strangeness in the nature of her writing, I just love the way it sounds. I did not expect a Japanese breakfast sounding song from Jenny Hval. I will say that. This sounds straight out of Japanese Breakfast's most recent album, or even Soft Sounds from Another Planet, that album too. There's just something so nurturing about the way this track sounds, and that's something that I like about Japanese Breakfast music as well. Jade Brecky, she has that really soft appeal and that delicacy to her that I think comes through nicely in this track. Cemetery of Splendor is a great example of this as well, where you get to the 2-minute 37-38 mark and oh my god, the heavens open. It is glorious. The music sounds so beautiful here, and again, looking back to what I usually expect from Jenny, this isn't that. So I'm pretty in awe of how this track progresses and how stunning it sounds. It does just feel like she's emphasized that beauty in her music on this album, and I really appreciate her for that, because yeah, tracks like this really, really nail it. The influence from other artists, I think, comes through a little bit because we got Jupiter, which I think sounds straight out of the Julia Holter playbook. Even quite a bit of this album actually feels like it's as expansive and as lush as something Julia would do. Obviously, Julia does it on a grander scale with, you know, larger instrumentation backing her throughout an album, particularly like Aviary, and of course that album's like 90 minutes, and this album here is nowhere near that length. It's basically half of that length actually, but still I feel like the foundations of what Julia would insert into her Baroque pop isms and her chamber pop isms are certainly coming through in what Jenny's doing. I thought the track Freedom was interesting on a lyrical level. Feel like this track is basically sort of inserting this idea of wanting something that you think exists, but you're not entirely sure it does exist. She talks about democracy and things like that, and then she talks about a few other things, and then is like, maybe that never existed, or maybe that wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It's sort of like this escapism to a world you think is there, but actually in reality it isn't there, and it probably never will be there, but you just seem to cling on to the idea that it exists. I'd certainly say it's the most thought out track lyrically, because obviously you still have the title track, which once again feels quite abstract-y. She talks about how to kiss marbles and gold. I don't know, I've never really thought about doing that, but I guess the question is yet to be answered, and maybe we'll find out. But Jenny Hval doesn't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I don't know who does. The final track, I think, brings the serenity full circle. You get the beauty in the music on this track. Everything just sounds so crisp. Her vocals, the instrumentation, it is just so beautiful. It's so peaceful and calm sounding as well. Yeah, I'm really impressed with this album. Like I say, lyrically it probably is held back at times just because of my own confusion. Maybe it's me not fully grasping what she's talking about, and maybe within a few months I go back to these tracks and it clicks. But I like an album that can give me that potential, you know. There's more for me to learn, and if I never learn more, I'll still probably be waiting to learn. And I feel like that'll make the re-listens more and more interesting and captivating. And even if I don't have that much of an interest in trying to figure it all out, I've got a really beautiful sounding album out of it as well. So there's a lot of wins from this album, and I think the replay value is certainly strong. I'm gonna go 8 out of 10. I think this is great, and I think, like I say, musically there's enough here from her beautiful vocals, the serenity in the instrumentation, to keep me going and to keep me wanting to go back to this as frequently as I can, because I think this is a great musical album. I think the production is stellar, the mixing is really on point, everything about it is so crisp. There's a vibrancy to her vocals as well that I've never really fully picked up on before. I've not really expected from her before, but this album here brings that, and I love it. So certainly a highlight for the year for me, and hopefully will be for you too. So if you've checked it out, let me know your thoughts. If you haven't heard it already, do let me know what you think as well. And that is it from me. Thank you for watching as always. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon. To all you Patreon supporters, you are fantastic. If you have any interest in supporting me through that, go check it out. The link is in the description. If you want any more reviews, let me know what you think I should review next. Have a good day and goodbye.